Hey guys, welcome to our startup panel here at Build. We're going to start about a minute or two, give people to come in from lunch. Did everybody have lunch? Did you guys have a good lunch? Yes? Is anybody excited to be here and ask some startup leaders questions, or you're just looking at me? I'm excited. So we've got 4 amazing panelists, so we're going to start in about a minute or two.
All right.
Hold on, we're going to start in a minute or two. We're going to give people another minute to show up. Okay, guys, we're going to start our panel. I'm Christine Matheny. I'm a startup developer evangelist, startup liaison here at Microsoft. My job is to make startups successful on the Microsoft platform. I've got 4 amazing panelists who are going to tell you a little bit about why they're awesome and how startups are being successful here in Silicon Valley. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell you about their companies and what they do. So, Esther, do you want to start?
Sure. Hi, my name is Esther Poon, and I am working on a company called Tripsipy. It's like a recipe for trips. It's in trip planning. So if you think of the last time you planned a trip, you might have used TripAdvisor, maybe Lonely Planet, Ask a Friend for recommendations. So you might have 15 tabs to even 30 tabs open, but you don't know if the restaurant that your friend recommended is even close to your hotel. So that's a mess. What we do is we essentially help you make that entire planning process much simpler and faster. We have a browser plugin so that no matter what web page you're on, whether it's a friend's email with recommendations, Lonely Planet, or anything else, hit that plugin. We save everything you're interested in. Just come back to Tripsipy, where everything is already plotted on a map waiting for you. You can drag and drop to plan by day, take it with you when you're actually on your trip, on mobile, offline, etc. So we're looking to provide this end-to-end trip experience.
And can you tell us about what your role is and how long you've been with Tripsipy?
Yeah, so I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of Tripsipy as well. We've been working on this for about a year and a half.
Cool, thank you.
Hi, I'm Anna Shedletsky. I was formerly the system product design lead on Apple Watch, and me and my co-founder, who's also on that team, started this company last May. It's called DFX Machina. We create tools to help engineers find and fix issues on their hardware development lines with the goal of essentially moving into the data space for manufacturing in the future to propel future factories, which need to get a lot smarter than what they are now. Consumer electronic devices are pretty much assembled entirely by hand, even though they're like really advanced and they're super tiny. And so this is a space that we're working in.
And how long have you been?
So we incorporated last May, so we're less than a year old. And I'm the CEO of the company, and we're going to be 5 people next week. So living the dream.
Hi, everybody. My name's Deb Noller. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Switch Automation. We are headquartered out of Sydney, Australia, but we also have an office here in San Francisco. We currently have a staff of 37 people, and our platform manages the Internet of Things in buildings. So we connect devices and systems and data in buildings, and we bring all of that into a single platform so that people that are managing lots of buildings can do a much better job of it. So you'll notice that here today it is freezing in this room. So this building is clearly not a very smart building, and in fact most of the buildings around the planet are not very smart at all. Even though they might have really sexy fit outs and look like they're smart, most of them are managed quite poorly. So my single passion and goal in life is to make the world manage their buildings better. And our company is 10 years old. We've had 2 major pivots, and we've completely rewritten our technology into the cloud.
Well, thank you.
Hey guys, I'm Ainsley Braun. I'm CEO and co-founder of Tinfoil Security. We've been around for about 4.5 years right now. I've been with the company since the beginning. What we do is security for DevOps. So we do proactive vulnerability detection, and it's specifically targeting developers in the development process to find vulnerabilities sooner rather than as an afterthought as a part of the security process.
And how long has it been around?
About 4.5 years.
And you're the CEO?
I'm the CEO, yeah.
Perfect. So we had a really good discussion earlier, and we were talking a little bit about what made you want to start your own company, what made you leave your previous job and start what you're doing now, and do you have any lessons learned or advice you may have if people want to go through the same process you went through? And I'll let whoever wants to go first.
Sure, I'll go first. So early stage, we were finding, we're not necessarily, my co-founder and I aren't necessarily the most typical users of websites. So we kind of look at websites in a different light, and we were finding lots of vulnerabilities in very popular websites. We disclose the vulnerabilities, tell them exactly where it was. They'd say, thanks, we went ahead, we fixed it. Usually they didn't actually fix the vulnerabilities though. They'd put a patch around it and we could still exploit the vulnerability. So we realized that especially startups needed security. So we started as security for startups. Very bad idea, never do that. Startups don't want to pay for anything. We moved into security for SMBs, and we moved to enterprise about 1.5 years ago. So, our impetus was making sure that our own data, we're using all these interesting startups and companies, but our own data wasn't secure, so that was the start for Tinfoil.
Why did I start my own company? Most entrepreneurs are unemployable, so that's a reason that most of us start our own company. We work for large companies, and we just can't stand seeing poor decisions being made and then executed upon. And it's very hard if you're that kind of person to sit there and watch that unfold, and sooner or later you'll put your hand up and say, that's just the dumbest idea I've ever heard. So that's essentially, I think, why most entrepreneurs start their own companies, is that they feel that they can do something better than the companies that they're working for, or they have really great ideas and other people are not doing it. Me, I was the daughter of, my father was a builder, a contractor, you call them here, and so I was always fascinated with building things. It was why I was drawn to tech in the first place. You start with a blank screen and you create something, so it's a fantastic feeling to actually build something. And a company is just an extension of that. It's absolutely fantastic to start with an idea and then build upon that. And this is my 5th company, and I've always been extremely fascinated with how you can build something that's truly global and truly scalable. So I'm perfecting that.
I would say that I kind of polished my teeth, or whatever the expression is, as an engineer, and grew up as an engineer at Apple, and I'm really thankful for the time that I spent there and what I got to work on. I learned how to build millions of things, which as someone who's in their 20s is something you often don't get to do, and I was given a lot of responsibility. So I'm really happy about that experience. I had a personal tragedy in my life that made me reevaluate how I was spending my time, because I recognized that it was limited. And that made me kind of reflect on, there's a lot of negative things in my life, and I should just focus on, building the world that I want to live in instead of building someone else's vision of the world, which, similar to what Deb was saying, sometimes you don't agree with the decisions that they're making. And so that was really the main impetus to get me out of what I was doing up close and start looking for other opportunities. And then I went out and I interviewed at a bunch of startups, and I was like, oh, I could do that. And so I think part of it was also the realization that even as one individual, you have power to go out and seek and change the world in a way that you see that the world needs to be changed. And I think that whole loss of fear that came out of working on hardware that could at any moment break and cost millions of dollars, and have all these scary executives yelling at you, moving out of that fear mode to oh no, I'm not afraid to fail because this is way better, to be moving in this direction towards something I'm really passionate about and something I can make an impact on. I have a degree in mechanical engineering, and the robot revolution is going to happen during my lifetime, so I should be there. I should be working on that. And so that's what I decided to do.
Cool.
So my path, a little bit different. Didn't come from a technical background. I used to be a lawyer, actually, corporate lawyer to be exact. So for me, I worked on a lot of financings, formations, M&As, sometimes on IPO. And while I actually really did enjoy the day-to-day of corporate work, I realized that all these really fascinating companies are coming to us, asking us to help them paper the way to do more fascinating things. And I definitely knew that I wanted to be on that other side. So if you're going to take that risk, better do it earlier rather than later. So when it came time, right, to actually make that jump, for me, the travel space was a natural fit. I used to do a lot of field work, and all the problems that I saw in travel was something that I saw just over the years was not being addressed or answered. So to be completely fair, lawyers are the most risk-averse people in the world. So how did I end up jumping in? I think that entrepreneurship, while it is a huge risk, it's also largely about de-risking, right? So the more questions you ask, the more you can de-risk, then the more steps you can take forward.
Cool. So this is a diverse panel of people. Well, it's not. It's mostly mostly women, so maybe it's not a diverse panel. But how do you guys encourage diversity in your companies, and what is your approach to diversity? I know, Deb, you've got both cultural diversity and gender diversity at Switch, so would you guys be willing to talk about that? Do you want to start, Deb, about your story?
So I actually have been involved in a few women's things lately in the last 3 years, and I actually recognised that I had my own unconscious bias. And when I looked around my team, I was the only female in a company of around 15 to 20 people, and I realised that I needed to actually actively go about fixing that. That happened at exactly the same time as I started doing these intern programs and I was bringing on some young girls that just needed that first lucky break. Like most of us have had a lucky break in our life, and I knew a couple of young women who needed that, and I didn't realise until I started this what an enormously positive impact that was going to have on our company. So we're on our fourth intern. They've all been female and they're actively looking for females, but at the same time I recognised that most of my company was the stereotype male tech programming people, and so I actively went out and filled some of my more senior positions with women. So yeah, it was a proactive step.
I think you mentioned in a previous conversation that you've got diverse people across the world as well?
Correct. So we have an office of 14 staff in the Philippines, and we also have an office of 7 staff in Ukraine, in Lviv. And does Australia count? Yeah, so we also have an office in Australia.
Cool. Does anybody else want to comment on how diversity their approach?
So I can comment. So my company's really small, and all of my coworkers are male. Not on purpose. That's just kind of how it's worked out. But when you read about, this is something I've been a student of, because even back at Apple, I was spending lots of time trying to figure out how to take our organization that was 70 with 2 women and turn it into something that was a little bit more balanced. And there's so much data that says that hiring managers tend to hire people who are like them. And so what I think is unique about the team that I'm putting together is that each individual is very much an individual, and that we are similar in the fact that we are like quite angular. And so I think we're like setting a pretty good foundation to be able to continue to bring in diverse perspectives. I think the other thing I would add is that, kind of adding on to what Deb is talking about, I spend a significant amount of my time working with students at Stanford and UC Berkeley who are STEM university women studying in STEM fields with aspirations to go into these jobs. And I've set up this mentoring program with industry women who they talk and do mentorship, and most of what they learn about is what kinds of jobs they can do, what the environment is really like, and those women seem to be much more successful in terms of like breaking through some of the, at least interview barriers that get set up. And we work on like interviewing, and we work on resumes and all of that. And so there's just like kind of a lot of things that can be done that are really easy, like really simple. And so I'm really passionate about that. And if anybody here wants to, who's in industry and wants to mentor a university student, please come talk to me, because it's a program that it makes a big difference. We have 60 students in the program this year.
Cool, thank you. So I'm going to ask one more question of you guys, and then I'm going to have the audience open up for questions. So this is my favorite question. What is something you learned the hard way that we don't, and can you share it with us so we don't have to learn it the hard way? I kind of prepped you for this earlier, but it's a fun question, and I'm going to walk around. If anybody has any questions, raise your hand.
I still have to think about this one. Esther, you want to go?
That's a good question. It's a hard question. I think something that is company specific that I learned the hard way is to really be conscious about listening to the feedback that you're getting. I think that's an easy one because everyone says, listen to the feedback. And I think that as you remember how I said before, running a company is constantly de-risking and trying things and discarding things. And sometimes we find out 10 months later, we're like, oh, these people keep mentioning this randomly. And we just we tried to pay attention to everything, but we just didn't see it, right? So I think on the company side, that's one thing that I definitely learned the hard way. And I think on a personal level, I think that one of the main things that I've learned just throughout my meandering path, I used to be in human rights and lawyering, corporate law, and then startups, is to really, and again, it sounds cliche, but find what you enjoy doing and pursue that, right? Like a lot of the things that I ended up enjoying doing may not have, in my mind, directly led to a position in what I thought would be in human rights or in law or whatever. But if you continue to pursue those specific things, like it'll take you to unexpected places, like doing a startup, but follow that path.
So kind of piggybacking on your answer, the biggest thing for me was that every single person that you talk to is going to have an opinion. And listening to opinions is important, but no advice is good advice until it's proven right for your company. There are people who have created these giant companies, these giant startups, they've had great exits, and they're going to give you a piece of advice that worked for them, but it doesn't necessarily work for you. When we were targeting the SMB market, we were in it for about 3 years, and it took a lot of energy out of us, and it was just disheartening, just because the biggest issue for us is that there's a huge educational problem with SMBs and security, and we don't have the bandwidth to teach as a startup. And we were taking advice from people who had been successful in SMB in literally every vertical but security. We tried all their advice, and sometimes you just have to think to yourself, hey, is this really working? And going about it and just trying something different. So that was the big thing for me, is just making sure that I'm a little bit more realistic with myself earlier rather than later. And I think we're much better at that after the past year and a half being an enterprise. But sometimes you rely a little too heavily on people who have done it right rather than your own experiences.
Thanks. So I'm going to take our first question.
Hi. My question's for Deb. You said that you specifically went out to go find female interns and females to put into leadership roles. Was there any backlash from the male employees for going out specifically to find women versus just anybody?
Yeah, that's correct. So that's the question that I struggle with about the whole women's thing myself, is like, what, are we woe is me? Am I so pathetic that I need to have a quota for women, and that I can't stand on my own 2 feet? And I've been in tech for 20-something years, so why do we need to think like that? But if we're actively going to change the situation, we have to take actions to change the situation. So I spoke about it with my team. I told my team that there was a couple of roles that I was actively going to go out and seek women in those roles. The results have spoken for themselves. Nobody argues with that anymore. And I'm the mother of 4 sons. So if anyone was going to have an argument against this, I would have that, because it's basically a discrimination against my own sons coming into the workforce. I think that if you are really going to fix a situation, then you have to take active steps to do so. So, yeah.
Are there any other questions from the audience? Okay, I get to keep asking questions. This is fun. So we talked earlier about skills. And so what skills, I think the question I asked, what skills did you not, or didn't know you needed to be a leader of a startup company?
I think Esther and I both agreed that kind of everything. You don't necessarily what skills you need until you are there doing it. It's useful for me because I've got a co-founder and we're complete yin and yang. We're very opposite in terms of our skills. When, I don't know something technically, he knows it. He is really bad at organization and I'm great at organization. So we balance one another out really nicely. But especially in the early days, especially when you're first getting your first couple of employees, you're going to be the janitor, you're going to be the one taking out the trash, you're going to be the one building the website. I mean, if you don't have technical skills, you're going to learn technical skills. I'm still our full-time designer and I didn't come from a design background. So you're going to learn a whole bunch of different things, expect to learn a whole bunch of different things and be open to that. Because if you're open to it, you're going to be able to move a lot faster and you're just not going to be afraid and you're going to gain a lot more confidence.
Yeah, I agree with that. You come into a startup with one skill set that you're really strong at, and I would definitely say get a co-founder if you haven't got one, because then you can at least divide the things into, so our company, we were both technical co-founders, but we basically divided the company into internal and external. So I did everything that was external and John did everything that was internal. So he started managing the technical team and then I just did literally everything else. And that could be scrubbing the floors, taking the trash out, marketing, things that you're extremely uncomfortable with. My advice, I guess, is there are huge numbers of people that will help you for a cup of coffee. You can sit down with anybody who has a specialty in that area and they'll give you their advice. And you can always ask, what's the worst thing? People will just say no, but actually most people don't say no. Most people will help you.
Yeah, that's a really good point because you can even reach out to people on LinkedIn and be like, I'm not trying to hire you. I just want to, you seem like you have a lot of experience in this area. Can we have a phone call? And be like, sure, give me time. So people are really generous, and especially Silicon Valley has a very pay it forward kind of attitude. And so I think learning to ask for help and not hide stuff is certainly a good lesson. I think one that I have been learning that's maybe you don't think about when you start a company is you now have to interview for all these roles that do things that you don't know how to do. And so how do you figure out if someone's good at something if you yourself don't know how to do those things? And so that's something that Ainsley had been helping me with in terms of hiring my first software team. Both me and my co-founder are mechanical engineers. So that, and then right now I'm spending most of my time on sales, and there are no books or things to, there's tons of stuff on the internet, but most of it doesn't seem to be super good. And so you have to kind of invent the wheel for your company, for your specific customers, how it's going to work. It's fascinating and I love it, but it's been really hard. So, yeah.
I think to piggyback on what everyone's been saying, especially at early stages, the answer to that question is everything, right?
Yeah.
You have to learn everything and you have to learn how to leverage other people to help you. Don't be afraid to ask for help and also don't be afraid to give help, right? That's how you build that community and make sure you form that community so that you can leverage everyone's skills into your own company.
Cool. So we've been talking a lot about how startups are hard and that there's some challenges. What is the best part of working for a startup and what's the best part of your job? What makes you excited every day?
I love our employees and I love our customers. Especially as an early stage startup, you don't have a lot of time to deal with a lot of BS. So, you're going to work with people who are going to help you, support you, and that includes customers, it includes your employees. So for me, it's, going to work every day and working with the people who are, my best friends, because if you're a small team, you're going to become best friends, and if not, then there's going to be quite a bit of shakiness. But you'd be surprised at who's going to support you. And, we're working with some very large customers right now, and they're very willing to give feedback, and they're very appreciative. If you can provide value to them, then they're going to be able to help you and just jump in there.
Yeah, it's just about having a really clear vision about what it is that you're creating, and if you've got that vision, you're going to have it, 2 steps forward, 3 back, 2 steps forward, 1 back, 2 steps forward, and little by little you're going to get where you need to get to. There's no doubt about it. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever do, but it's also extremely exciting. I mean, there will be failures along the way. It's just part of what you're doing when you're creating a company, but that's all part of the learning. And people often ask me, if you had your time differently, what would you do different? And there's nothing, because it's all part of the journey. You can't get there any faster, and if you got there any faster, maybe your market wouldn't be there. And so it's just part of the journey that you've chosen. So it is exciting. It's much more exciting than going to work for some company that you don't honestly believe in what they're doing, or you don't like the people that you're working with. This is all within your own control.
Yeah, I would say that it's working on stuff where, previously I worked on products that I couldn't tell anybody about. I still can't tell anybody about what I'm doing, but the watch. I worked on this for 2 years before it came out, and there was one big party, and everybody had a party one day when we announced it, and then it was back to work and back into the trenches again. And there's very little, the cycle between, oh, I did all this hard work and here's the reward, was just too long. And so what I love about about the business that I am building is that we implement a change for our customers, and the next day they're like sending us emails back being like, this is awesome, like this saved us so much time, and like that cycle is so short, and it can be for multiple customers at the same time. And so I like really can feed off of that energy. It makes me really excited to go to work and continue to build this product that like creates this reaction. So have a lot of impact.
The thing that makes me really excited every day is really hearing from our users, right? Because at the end of the day, that's for a consumer-facing product. Like that's who matters, and that's whose hands your products are going to be in. I think that it is really important to be excited and passionate, right, about what you're building and working on. But we have to also be honest and say that there are going to be days when it's going to be really hard. It's going to be really hard, and we're just talking about this earlier, right? And Ainsley said that we should be more honest about it, to talk about the bad days as well. And I think that for me, what helps us pull through together is to see, hey, this is actually changing like one person's life, or somebody's really excited about what we're making.
Cool. So I think we've got time for one more question. Does anyone in the audience have a question? No. Oh, over here.
Hi, I'm Chris from Norway. I was just wondering, how do you start from a funding perspective? Do you go to investors, or do you live on air and love in the beginning?
You do whatever it takes. So yeah, I mean, you start a company and you use your own savings, and then you try and get to revenue as soon as you can. I mean, one of the big myths about startups is that everyone gets funded, and 99.9999% of all startups never get funded. It's a very small percentage of companies that get funded. So that's the hardest thing, is working out how to stay solvent while you fail and then succeed. Yeah.
For us, I mean, every single startup has a really different path to revenue, to funding, to success. Some people will do an accelerator, and from the accelerator they'll go through demo day and get a fundraising round. A lot of other people will build a good, solid product, start to get some customers, go out and network. I mean, networks are small. You have some network that exists, and through them and maybe through their friends, there's somebody you can reach. And investors are sheep. When you get one, you can slowly get introduced to another and another and another. It's very much that network effect that actually happens, and it's really unique to see. But what happens for you is going to be very different from what happens for any of us. So
We quit our jobs, and I found a deal with a company that had hired one of my former coworkers and said, okay, we're going to provide this service. And we literally, like 12 hours later, I had a plane ticket to China, and I needed to have a system. And so I went to the Container Store, and I bought a bunch of Legos. Like, I couldn't even use Amazon. There wasn't enough time. So like I had to go like to physical stores and buy things, point and shoot cameras. And like I built the fixtures on the factory floor out of Legos, which I know sounds really janky, but like you do what you have to do to prove that you do the non-scalable thing. You do the thing to prove somebody will pay for this. And that this is useful. And so we did that for that customer. We collected data for every single unit they've ever built. We're in their mass production. We're on their line right now as units go through. And we use that as the proof point to show like, hey, look, our system's way more accurate. We can do these things. We save them this much money. We use that to go raise money. So like there are some like other things about like, do you take money from friends and family? And like personally, I said no. Because I did all the research on that, and usually they get screwed. So before you take money from friends and family, make sure that you feel comfortable with how that could work out, and all of that. So that was one. So we just. Oh, sorry.
Do you have one last quick piece of advice?
One Esther. Do you want
to? Yes, on that same question. I think that on my first day of law school, they taught me that the answer to everything is it depends. And apparently it's true again. I think it just depends on the type of company that you're building. There's going to be a different path, and as as already been mentioned, you do whatever it takes, and it will keep changing. Like every day, what you need to do to keep the company going will keep changing.
Cool. Well, can we give our startup CTOs, CEOs a round of applause? Thank you.